This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. This is about a system that quietly agreed to stop asking whether numbers were real. And what happens when that agreement breaks? For a long time, something invisible held together. Paper valuations, institutional trust, the assumption that the math was honest because everyone needed it to be. Today, that assumption cracked. Not loudly, not all at once, but in a way that makes it impossible to pretend nothing changed. Because when a system built on confidence loses control of a single cornerstone, the question is never about the property. It's about what else was being held up by the same illusion. Stay with me. Because once you see how this mechanism actually works, you can't unsee how fragile it's always been. And what's coming next is not contained. It never is. What actually controls this system is not law. It's not elections. It's not even money. It's permission. Permission granted quietly by institutions that decide when scrutiny applies and when it's inconvenient. Banks that don't ask hard questions because fees are profitable. Auditors who accept numbers because challenging them would collapse relationships. Gatekeepers who understand the math doesn't work but sign anyway. This is how power operates now. Not through force. Through mutual tolerance of fiction. As long as the story holds, the system moves. Loans clear. Influence accumulates. Access concentrates. And the most important rule is never written down. No one pulls the thread if too many people are wearing the same suit. That's why this was never about a personality. Personalities are replaceable. The mechanism is not, because once the system learns it can survive on belief instead of verification, reality becomes optional. And that's where the danger begins to accelerate. Because the moment belief wavers, the system doesn't correct itself. It panics. There was a time when numbers were anchors. They limited behavior. They forced discipline before value had to survive scrutiny, before exaggeration carried consequences, before the lie was risky. Now, the shift happened quietly. Valuations became flexible. Assumptions became aggressive. And everyone does it became a substitute for truth. The danger wasn't that the system changed. It's that it changed slowly enough to feel normal. Each small tolerance made the next one easier. Each exception rewrote the baseline until reality itself became negotiable. And once numbers stop describing the world, they start shaping it. Assets inflate, influence compounds, power detaches from performance. Nothing breaks at first. That's the trick. The system keeps moving right up until the moment it doesn't. Because slow corruption doesn't announce itself as collapse. It announces itself as stability. And that illusion is always most convincing just before it fails. Then the system did something it almost never does. It intervened. Control was removed, not symbolically, operationally. A property that had functioned as a nerve center, a place where access was currency, where loyalty was performed, where money moved because proximity mattered. Suddenly, it wasn't available. Events canceled, rooms restricted, movement supervised, not because of ideology, because of math, because one set of numbers had been used to extract money and another set had been used to avoid paying it back to the public. That discrepancy wasn't debated. It was documented. This wasn't punishment. It was containment. And here's the detail that should stop you. The action wasn't aimed at reputation. It was aimed at cash flow. Because when a system finally acts, it doesn't go after image. It goes after oxygen. If you're still watching, stay with me. Because this wasn't the collapse. This was the pressure test. And the system just revealed where it hurts. Here's how the mechanism actually works. Damage doesn't land where the benefit is created. It's displaced. Institutions collect fees up front. Risk is deferred. Accountability is diluted across time, departments, and paperwork. When valuations rise, access expands. Loans get cheaper. Influence multiplies. When valuations fall, the cost doesn't hit the people who approved them. It hits balance sheets. It hits workers. It hits public trust. This is not a glitch. It's a design feature because the system rewards those who can turn confidence into leverage and punishes those who rely on reality alone. For decades, the math didn't need to be true. It only needed to be believable long enough. Everyone involved understood the trade. No one wanted to be the first to say the numbers didn't make sense, because pulling that thread wouldn't just expose one account. It would expose the agreement itself. And once that agreement breaks, the damage doesn't stay contained. It spreads. And now it has. Once the pressure was applied, things moved quickly. Cooperation replaced silence. Distance replaced loyalty. Institutions that once defended the numbers began handing them over. Emails surfaced. Internal doubts became evidence. What had been tolerated as aggressive suddenly looked deliberate. What had been waved through as standard practice started reading like pattern. And patterns are dangerous because a single discrepancy can be explained. A system of discrepancies cannot. The story stopped being about one asset. Then it stopped being about one portfolio. Then it stopped being about one individual. It became about exposure. Who signed, who approved, who knew. And here's the part the system never plans for. Once scrutiny starts, it doesn't move sideways. It moves outward. Every institution begins calculating distance. Every partner starts asking, who's next? Because in a system built on shared belief, the moment belief breaks, everyone rushes for the exit. And exits, when crowded, turn into collapses. Here's where this stops being abstract. Because while institutions reposition and executives lawyer up, you absorb the consequence. You pay higher borrowing costs when trust erodes. You face tighter credit when banks overcorrect. You watch markets swing not on performance, but fear. This isn't theoretical damage. It shows up in rent, in rates, in retirement accounts that suddenly feel less solid than you were promised. And you're told this is just volatility, just adjustment. But adjustment always travels downward. Those who extracted value early already exited. Those who tolerated fiction already collected fees. You are left inside a system recalibrating itself violently. And the most unsettling part, none of this required your consent. If you're still here, pay attention, because the story isn't about who falls. It's about who quietly survives untouched and why the system is built to make that possible. This doesn't stop at one country because trust-based systems don't respect borders. Capital moves faster than law, and belief, once broken, travels even faster. International lenders notice, foreign investors recalculate. Allies quietly adjust their exposure. When confidence in one market wobbles, others don't, wait to see if it recovers. They hedge, they pull back, they reroute. That's how local failures become global signals. Not declarations, signals. And signals change behavior suddenly. Risk premiums rise. Currency assumptions soften. Deals take longer. Costs increase. No announcement is made. No emergency broadcast goes out. The system simply becomes less forgiving. And the unsettling truth is this: global markets don't punish morality. They punish uncertainty. And uncertainty, once introduced, never fully leaves. It lingers. It reshapes decisions. It quietly narrows the margin for error everywhere else. Which raises the final question: what happens next when the system has to choose how to respond? From here, there are only three paths. And none of them are clean. The first is adjustment. The system tightens, standards harden. Verification returns. It's painful, but contained. Some players exit. Some valuations reset. Trust slowly rebuilds at a higher cost. The second path is erosion. Nothing breaks all at once. Rules exist, but enforcement becomes selective. Confidence never fully recovers. The system keeps functioning, but with thinner margins, shorter time horizons, and constant low-grade instability, and then there's rupture. That's when correction arrives too late. When belief collapses faster than institutions can respond, when exits overwhelm safeguards. In rupture, value evaporates. Power scrambles, and legitimacy fractures the system hasn't chosen yet. And that's the danger, because delay feels safe until it isn't. And the longer uncertainty lingers, the more likely the system drifts toward the path it fears most. We're not at the end of this story. We're at the moment where direction is still undecided. Here's what makes this moment unstable. Nothing has been resolved. Not legally, not financially, not systemically. A line was crossed, but it wasn't erased. The mechanism that allowed fiction to function as value is still in place. The incentives remain. The permissions haven't been fully revoked. What changed is awareness. And awareness is dangerous to systems that depend on silence. Because now the question isn't whether this can happen again. It's where it's already happening and who's still pretending not to see it. Don't look for a verdict to tell you when this is over. That's not how these failures end. They end when attention moves on, or when the next correction arrives without warning. Stay with this. Follow the numbers, not the narratives, because the next story won't announce itself as a crisis either. And if you miss it, you won't miss the consequences. If you want to understand where this system bends next, you'll need to keep watching.